Good morning. Sorry, I had to start the stream a little late. How's everybody's morning going? How did everybody do during FOMC yesterday? It's probably just filling the fair value gap for Micron. Alright, so really quick, let me go to my other watch list. Microsoft did super good, and I just want to look at their chart for a moment here. We'll hide the drawings because those aren't really super relevant right now. And let me fix my moving averages really quick. So it is back up at that 200-day moving average. Basically right in there. Even higher than that. It's actually absolutely flying right now. So it's extremely likely Microsoft is trying to head back up to this 465 or 466. So we're just going to mark that. Which that does break some of this bearish structure. Will be well above its daily upper Bollinger as well. I actually think it's going to be, yep, above the weekly as well. So Microsoft pushing above that weekly upper Bollinger does heavily imply that we should be seeing the price action basically hold above that range for about 2 weeks. Doesn't mean it can't pull back down again, of course. But it'll be holding around that range unless there's some sort of bad news. I know I've been watching the GLW. Kind of sad we didn't get entry into that, but it is what it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn off the moving averages. Let's focus on the SPY. So we did have the GDP data come in somewhat cool. The PC data came in somewhat hot, if I remember correctly. I didn't get a chance to actually take a look at it too much. So we're going to see if the market tries to aim for the top of this selling channel again, which that's basically at that 741.75. Now I want to look at 5-minute time frame. 5-minute time frame showing a pretty large push up, but that's largely attributed to Microsoft. So I don't want to short into that yet. We'll see the volatility in a couple seconds when it updates. The HIG is up quite a bit today. It did drop all the way to that 779.11, excuse me. Yesterday it went from basically that 79.37 all the way down to the 79.14. Volatility has dropped a bit, but we're still somewhat elevated, which is a little concerning. Again, we're still above that 98 range, which does tell us that dealers still have that downside hedge going. So could potentially be a good short opportunity in here. Do that cup and handle. I don't really like the structure here just yet though, so I am going to wait because potentially we could be, basically ripping all the way up to that 742, or we could be starting to form a head and shoulders to head down, but it's still just way too soon to really determine that. My ACN contracts are absolutely flying right now. They're actually getting close to at the money too. Jeez. Volatility is rising slightly, but that doesn't mean today's going to be a selling day just yet. We did have Meta do pretty bad in the earnings, so that's something to consider, but those Microsoft earnings are very, very good, and that can definitely pull a ton of weight back into tech. Thank you, Silver, I appreciate it. Alright, let's see. Hold on. Well, because things are always in hindsight, right? It's like, it's easy to say that we would have known that the market's not going to do well. And that kind of was my base case moving into yesterday, was that we were either going to have a bearish day or an extremely bearish day. We did have the bearish day. It might have seemed extremely bearish, but if we got the rate hike, it would have been an absolute disaster. We probably would have seen the SPY pull underneath 700 something. So, um, that was kind of the base case for the day yesterday. And when we hit the top of the channel, that blue selling channel, for me, that was just kind of just a no-brainer to load up on puts. Especially because Warsh wasn't exactly being hawkish in his language, but he did have some very hawkish undertones, and some of the wording he used was intentionally misleading, we'll put it that way. And I think the market's obviously caught wind of that too. But there was always the case where, you know, the markets took the pause as a positive thing, and then all of a sudden the Fed could have came out and said, oh, the CPI report was very, very cool. We're seeing some steps of inflation coming down, blah, blah, blah. And that would have really rallied the market at that point. So as much as we can be, convicted about one direction or the other, we have to be very cautious as we trade. It's all about the entries, really. If the entries are present, then we can take them. If not, then we just have to be patient until they are. Volatility kind of chopping around that 102.40. So I do think we're going to push up here. So a lot of my dated contracts are actually getting very, very close to at the money. Super happy about that. The Merck & Co. puts that we discussed the other day are basically only $3 from at the money, which is not that much at all. Our ACN puts not too far from being at the money. Our Leidos Holdings puts are only $1 away from being at the money. Let's see, IEX. IEX is still about $3 away. Johnson & Johnson heading down towards our put strike as well. Still has a little bit of a way to go, but we have plenty of time on that. Okay, so let's check volatility and everything again. Volatility's still at that 102.30, so still elevated, not really telling us one way or another. The HIG has been buying up though. It did open at the 79.34, currently at 79.39. support is actually up a ton right now. So here's some that's selling. Now, one thing we're going to look for the selling here is if we pass this support range at the 733.89. Volatility at the 102.60. Also, good morning, everyone. I don't know if you said it or not. I'm super tired. I apologize. So I'm not liking the entries just yet. I want to take a look at QQQ and semis though. QQQ very, very, very likely heading to that 680. And we can delete this older support range. No longer necessary. So we're going to be watching to see if QQQ pushes for that. Now semis did close this cup here, but I do think they're trying to aim for that 496 prior to forming any type of bear structure for a handle. So we'll be looking for that as well. Because if QQQ and semiconductors are trying to form this cup to the upside, then it's very likely we will see that pull down to form a handle. Volatility still elevated though, still at that 102.40. HIG pulling back a little bit at the 79.37, was at the 79.39. Yeah, I actually have a lot of dated positions going right now that I like, and we can discuss those if everybody wants. I know most people watch for the, 0DT stuff, but um, we can go over my dated positions if everybody would like. So I am actually shorting ACN right now. I did have, longs going in ACN. Sorry for the big old box here. I did have longs going in ACN, but now that we did reach the upper Bollinger on the daily time frame, that's kind of my range to start exiting. So that's when I exit my calls and when I start taking my puts. So I did take the 155 puts for September 18th. Currently they're up almost 82% right now, which is kind of bonkers, but the tide changed within the options really from going to people heavily trying to short on this rally to the upside to people being heavily invested in calls. But now that we are seeing a little selling again, that put IV is starting to come back around. Now we did have a resistance at this 736.68. So we're going to see if we, if we reject off that range or not. The other trade that I've been really looking at is HIMS. And even though it did have another leg down yesterday because of the FTC lawsuit, I still think it's a super, super, super quality trade. I was basically able to load up a ton of calls right in that range. So I have the 35 strike calls for September 18th, and I think that those are going to absolutely blast off. HIMS is a good company, even if some people may not like it, but it is a really good company. I like buying good companies when they sell off. Another trade that I'm in is Johnson & Johnson. I have the 240 puts for September 18th. And as you can see, those are starting to do very well. Basically bought right at that 275 range. Slightly lower than that, it was like the 274 something, but it was within that range. So those are starting to do really nice. Another one is Lidios Holdings. So I did take puts up at the 118.70 something. Um, I have the 110 puts for September 18th. So only a dollar away from, basically $2 away from those landing. But I do expect those to basically take us all the way back down to that 98 range. Another one I have going is Merck & Co. Sorry for all the messy drawings. I did start shorting this at that 134 range. I have the 125 strike puts for September 18th, and as you can see, we're only $3 away from those landing in the money. So some of the trades going pretty good. Basically, the only trade that isn't going well right now is this ICANN Enterprises, which I have the 7 strike puts. I probably should have taken like the 7.5 strike puts. But this has not been selling off yet to what I like. So we did break through that resistance, which means if we are really going to continue heading upward today, then again, that 742 target or even the top of the channel where I have this 741.75 written, that's very likely going to be our upside targets today. Now let me go ahead and put the max pain and the call and put wall up. So just give me 1 second. So there's just going to be 3 lines here just arbitrarily for a moment. I'll make that text bigger. And this is at 736. And let's check our gamma. So we have the call wall at the 740. So that coincides a lot with that hitting of the upper channel there. And our put wall is at the 733. Alright, so very, very likely we're going to see this push above the call wall. Even though I may not like the call entry here, it's still very viable. But as always, I am a mean reversion trader, meaning that I look for, basically going the different direction than the market when we see it pushing outside the bounds of the Bollingers. So for me, this is kind of put entry in area rather than time to take calls. So not going to be taking any positions just yet. I will take positions if we see this call wall breached. Then I'll be looking for some puts, above that range. But I don't really want to take calls until we start pushing down into this put wall. Unless we see the gamma shift on it. Which very likely, if we do continue pushing upward, then the put wall would very likely shift upward as well. We do have the max pain at that 736, so the market has been really trying to gravitate towards the max pain lately. Yesterday was, kind of an exception. Yesterday was very news driven. Can you put that in the sell channel? So let me write this as the selling channel top. So this would kind of be that market confluence that I always like to talk about, right? Is that we have our call wall at the 740, we're at the top of the selling channel around that 741.75. It's very likely dealers are wanting to push us to that range. We see this on QQQ. We did hit our target. So we should start expecting some bearish structure to be pushed into that range. Also hit our target on semis. So I want to mark a couple more resistance rays down, or ranges, excuse me. So this is at the 589. We'll also set up that one, or that 504.99 as well. We can go ahead and delete this support at the 498. No longer necessary. So I want to scoot back out onto the 15-minute time frame here. But basically what we're looking for is for semis and for tech to start cooling down. Okay. That'll really give us our put entry into the SPY. Now, again, you kind of can chase some calls into this. I really wouldn't suggest that though. Um, but that's just based off of personal preference of how I trade. Yeah, I'm wanting to get into puts, really. Um, even with the buying we're seeing today, the market is still in bearish conditions overall, and the market's still going to be pricing in the rate hike for September. So it's hard for me to look at the market as bullish overall right now, even if we are seeing bullish price action. Now, granted, if we do get the opportunity where, say, we get a massive candle down below this put wall, and, closer to that lower Bollinger, that would be a super, super good call entry. Also, good morning, Wonders. Sorry, I kind of go through the chat in the opposite direction. I do apologize for that. Now, what I'm going to do if we push the upper call wall here and the top of the selling channel is I'm going to be opening additional SQQQ calls for September, as well as, some 0DT puts. But ideally, I'm going to be targeting those longer duration tech puts. Thank you, Anders. That means a lot to me. Now, our volatility has been dropping quite substantially. So it was at the, what did I say earlier, the 102.40. I think it jumped up to the 102.60 at one point. It's currently at 100.02. So that does coincide quite heavily with, this push to the upper call wall here. Sorry, I can't talk very well today. I'm losing my voice. We're seeing the HIG continue to buy. So it's at the 79.41. Again, this opened at the 79.34. So that's telling us that, corporate credit is being bought up pretty substantially right now. Now we are starting to see buyers slow down a little bit at the top of that cup on tech. And for semis, not this range, but this cup right here, we're still in between these two. So I do want to see if it tries to push this 504.99. HIG has continued to buy, so it's extremely likely we push above that call wall. the SQQQ strikes, so I have a couple different strikes going, but I do have the 50 strikes, or the 50 call strikes. Um, those are going to be a little more costly, but I do also have the 55 strikes going. So it'll probably be those 55 strikes that I add into once we get to that range. Now we are above the upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame and 15-minute time frame, but that doesn't mean we can't just continue pushing above that range right now. Haven't taken any 0DT trades yet, but my portfolio is absolutely soaring right now. I posted a list of dated positions I took, or I was wanting to take either on Monday or Tuesday. I want to say Tuesday. Um, and pretty much all of them are absolutely killing it right now. My HIMS calls are down, but I did add to them a ton yesterday after we did have that news with the FTC lawsuit. So even though they're down, they've been gaining a ton this morning. One thing that I think is interesting that I've been noticing over the last couple days though is that consultant firms seem to do really good during bear markets. And, you know, we're not in a bear market yet, but we are seeing somewhat bearish conditions, right? We've been seeing a lot of selling. On those days where we see a ton of selling, usually the consulting companies do very, very well. So I'm wondering if those are being used as a form of tech defensive. Just kind of food for thought. Now I want to look at QQQ here again. So we're going to mark this resistance here because it does seem to be one that we're trading around. And we're going to go ahead and delete this one that we pushed through. And that's kind of how I, handle my resistances and supports is that once we break under the range or really heavily push above that range, then I unmark it because it's no longer necessary. But that's also why you see like a ton of red lines on my SPY chart here. These are all resistance ranges that we have, pushed towards and then started to sell from. Just like a lot of these yellow lines are the opposite of that, where we've pushed down and started to see massive buying from that. And you can actually see this in the um, after hours of yesterday, where it basically hit right into that support range and then started to bounce. So I'm still being patient. Again, my target is going to be kind of in this range for setting up some puts. The 5K portfolio is currently at 4.1K. I haven't been focusing on it a whole ton because I've been trying to take a little bit longer duration trades than that just because about a month ago I had a really bad trading session of 0DTs, and yeah, I'm trying to not focus on 0DTs with that portfolio just yet till I build it back up a little more. I believe I posted these in the Discord. I don't remember if I post all those trades in that Discord or, in the Discord or not. I know I talked about them all in the Discord though, but I'm not sure if I made like a dedicated list or not. Something I need to do. Something I usually do. This week has been super, super busy for me though. Volatility is still sitting at that 100, and the HIG is still at the 79.41. So my expectation still is to push above that call wall and put wall. Let's go ahead and check the gamma again and see if anything has shifted. And it has not. I was trying to update the Google Doc for a while with all my trades, but it's just been way too difficult trying to manage everything. I've been posting a video every day. I've been trying to stream 4 times a week. Been writing a massive technical analysis post every night. So potentially QQQ could start or could be forming that bearish structure potentially here. If I could talk correctly. So we'll see if that turns into a head and shoulders or not. Then let's check semis. Kind of same thing for semis here as well. Now again, I don't really feel too confident in shorting this just yet. Doesn't mean the position isn't there. It just means that I personally want a different level. I'm super stoked about this trade right here because I took a whole ton of puts, basically right at that 174 yesterday. So those are absolutely flying right now. Volatility rising a little bit, so it's at 100.66. Still not having the conviction yet to fully enter puts, because I do think that we can still head upward a little bit further. Now, one thing that we did shift in our selling channel, sorry for all the lines on the screen, drives me crazy too, don't worry. We did expand our selling channel downward to these supports in here, okay? The reason why we did that is because we did see a break of the channel yesterday. The previous channel line was basically like that. Not exactly, but basically like that. And with it breaking underneath that, that means that the market is trying to very likely head downward further. So I did shift that support range to the that 739.55, and if we see a break underneath that, then we'll pull it back to the support, rinse, repeat. That's how you expand your selling channels. Call entry if we hit the 5-minute 20 MA. Yeah, I'd say that'd probably be a pretty good call entry. In fact, I might even take calls at that point too. Because again, I really dislike trying to take calls when it's pushed above the upper Bollinger. But if we do get that push to the 20 mile here, that'd be an acceptable call entry. Nothing I'd overcommit to. That'd be a very light entry because we do have the potential to continue heading down into that put wall / lower Bollinger. Yeah, that guy's my friend. So he made bank. Yeah, I talk to him often. Can we see a support bounce though on Meta? So let's go ahead and look at Meta. Not yet. With this support range being at that 519.78. $519.78 is, a major support. And on top of that, this is on the daily time frame. This is the first day of the lower Bollinger. Usually, generally, we will see a lower Bollinger day 2. Okay. So that means very likely tomorrow we should be seeing a lower low. So I would be trying to target that 519 to take calls into. Let's see, Johnson Johnson is up a ton right now. Or my puts are anyway. Good, this is melting quite nicely. Merck is almost at my put strike. I'm super happy about that. ACN, I only need another $5 downside, and I will be super good to go. HIMS, we still have a lot of work to do, but I do think that the market's going to buy up a lot of this selling weight. It's just an FTC lawsuit, who cares? Still expecting a lower second Bollinger move on the SPY. I actually think we can. I actually think it is, very, very high potential. The Microsoft earnings did kind of bounce it out of that range a little bit, but I still think the potential is there. Again, the market conditions right now are absolutely horrid overall. Just because we had a really good earnings from Microsoft doesn't really mean that the market's going to be saved, right? It could, it definitely could, but I don't think it will. Did I sell the J&J puts? No. I'm still writing those. All of these positions are for September 18th, so I'm going to be basically sitting in them for quite a while. I want these to not just hit the strike, but I want them to basically run deep into the money. It's kind of like these ACN puts I have. I purchased them for 260, or not 269, that's the current price. I purchased them for $113 per. Okay, so 1.13 per. I'm fully expecting those to go to like $1,500 to $2,000 per. I'll just sit on those. These Merc puts I bought at $3 or 3.29, so basically $330 per. I'm expecting that to basically run towards that 1,500 to 2,000 before I really take profit on those. Kind of same thing with the J&J, right? J&J I bought for 159 per. I expected to basically go to like that $1,100, $1,200. Potentially even more than that. Nope, I'm keeping my SQQQ open. Try to just load the GEX a few times. Sometimes it does that. But just keep trying to load it and it'll eventually pop up. Yep, I am looking to take puts basically above this call wall at the 740. Just obviously we haven't gone there yet, so I'm going to be super patient. Now I will be taking a very small call entry at the middle Bollinger slash 20 MA here. If I can adjust the color on this anyway. But that's going to be just a very, very, very small position. If we see the conditions right for that, if we start seeing a bounce, things like that. But I will be looking for calls underneath this put wall if we can reach that range today. Is there a cheap dated contract I can take? Let me look at QQQ or SQQQ really quick. How cheap are you looking for, Jin? Now, when we get to the top of the selling channel, the put strike that I'll be looking for is basically that 736, and kind of the same thing for if we get to the put wall, I'll be looking for calls around that 736. Um, However, if we do buy calls at this 20 mil range, assuming we pull down, then I will be looking for probably about those 740 calls. So they should be fairly cheap today. Um, a lot of the IV percentage was yesterday because we had the FOMC. Today should be a lot more relaxed in that regards. You have 103, so let me look. So there is a trade that I'm doing right now that is working out that actually does have room to run on it that is affordable. So let me pull that up. It's Edison Holdings. Now, the puts that I have are the 75 strike puts for August 21st. Okay. Um, I was, fortunate enough to buy it in the upper Bollinger. Basically bought right in that range. We did have push down, push back up. However, this is still going very much according to plan. I am fully expecting to see some downside. So there is room in these puts. It's not the most optimal trade, but I do think that the opportunity is there. And I do think that you could probably get, let me look. So there is the 72.5 strike puts. Now, it says that the price is 0.45. That's not correct at all. You could probably take some of the, or take one of those puts for about 0.75, but I'd put an offer at 0.71 and just slowly climb that up a couple cents each time until you get the buyout. Make sure you don't um, market purchase that because you will be paying like $30 more. But I do think that those puts can hit. It won't run in the money or at the money. Um, it could run at the money, but it'll definitely gain a lot of this weight to the downside. And again, it is a fairly cheap trade. We're seeing this turning into a little bit of a cup here, which again is, I really do expect the market to push above this call wall here. Push us very close to the top of that selling channel. Volatility did drop back down again. It was at 100.60 something. Now it's at 100.10. And the HIG is just on a tear right now. It's at 79.44. Again, I think it opened at 79.34. Yeah, opened at 79.34 and yesterday it pulled down to 79.14. So big money's telling us that, they are buying up the market right now. So I'll type it out, Jin. One second. So it's EIX 2.5 put, and you should be able to get that for about 73 for August 21st. Good morning, Jared. Call wall is at 740, put wall is at the 733. So what I'm waiting for basically today is for the market to push above the call wall, take puts down. Could you please explain the call wall and put wall gamma, how to use them? Okay, so yeah, we can go over that. So we're going to talk about the dealer perspective, okay? And we're going to act like I'm a banker going into the office to trade for the day. What do I want to look for to be selling contracts into? Because remember, we're not going to be buying contracts as a bank or as a big broker. We're going to be selling contracts into the market. So what are we looking for? We're looking for where the gamma's placed. Okay, and what the gamma really means is basically where everybody's lining up to put those orders towards. So this could be share orders, this could be options orders. But in this situation, we see that there's the call gamma at the 740. So if I'm the banker, I'm saying that, okay, I can basically sell calls and increase the IV the entire way up to this point. Now, once we get to this point, this is telling us that the interest is actually underneath our range. Okay, so it's at this point that we start saying, okay, we've provided a ton of liquidity into the market, we've sold a ton of high IV calls. Now I want to be able to buy those calls back. Okay, I want to start closing those positions. So I'm going to start closing those positions. And what that is going to do is start pulling the market down, okay, below that range of interest. Okay. And the reason why we want to do that is because we sold all these for very high IV, right? We want to be able to buy these positions back very, very cheaply later. So sell the market down, knock a lot of the people out of those high IV positions, the IV drops off, and then I buy them back up. I close my positions, I'm good to go. Kind of same thing with the put wall. If we start seeing a lot of selling down to the downside, we could say, okay, there is a ton of interest at that 733. I know that I can sell to that range, you know, selling puts, and I'll be able to basically capture buyers of those puts all the way to that area very, very easily. And I'll be able to sell very high IV contracts at that point. But after this range, it's going to be a little shaky. The buyers are no longer lining up at that point anymore. At this point, people might be trying to take profits and close their own positions. So, very likely, I can buy the market back up, then close those put positions for very, very cheap. So as a retail trader, we see the call and put wall and say that, okay, those are areas that the dealer are very likely going to gravitate towards. Okay, and if the dealers gravitate towards those ranges, then we can safely, I don't want to say safely, that's not the right word. Statistically, there's very high odds of seeing a reversal above that range. Okay, which means that we can trade within the mean reversion. We can expect a a shift in the sentiment. So even if the day is very, very bullish, we get to that call wall, get above it, and then that starts acting like a resistance. That'll act like a range to start eventually pulling us down. Even if we trade above that range for a while, the dealers are going to sell as many contracts as they can before they try to pull the market down below that range. And inversely with the put wall. Does that make sense? It's just kind of a way where we can use a dealer tool kind of against them. Now we are seeing this cup form here. We are seeing volatility drop even further, so it's at 99.50. The HIG is still absolutely flying, so it's at 79.47. So we should see our push above the call wall here. I think you can kind of do both, Jin. Is that you can take a put or, some cheap puts above the call wall, let those play out, and then towards the end of the day, you can enter some of those other puts as well. So just toss those on your watch list. That's what I would try to do then. I would try to wait for above that call wall, take some form of cheap puts. We'll price something out when we get above that. And then after that, use some of that, profit to enter some of those IEX calls or EIX calls or puts. I can't talk today. EIX puts. But another thing too, on that note, is that just because you do have cash available doesn't mean you have to commit it all to positions. It's kind of like when I'm trading. I still usually have about 20 to 30% of my portfolio sitting in cash at all times, basically, unless it's, one of my clients' long investment portfolios or something, then I put that into long-term stocks. But usually for day trading, for, mid duration trades, longer duration trades, I still want to have a very large cash position. So sitting on cash is still very nice to do. Because instead of having to feel like you need to force trades, you can wait until those really, really, really opportune trades open up. Yeah, you're very welcome, Joseph. I have another way to explain it too, but I don't know if we're gonna talk about that today. I always bring up, okay, we'll talk about it. It's like back when we were kids, right? When Halo first came out, we saw everybody lining up at GameStop at 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. in the morning to buy our Halo games. And Gamma kind of works like that. It's that the dealers see where everybody's lining up, waiting to buy things, getting ready to position, and they know that okay, there's 200 people in this line waiting to buy Halo. I know I could sell 200 copies of Halo to those people at that price. Um, that's Gamma in the most simple of terms. I'm a 90s kid, I grew up on that stuff. So we are seeing the cup and handle form. I know I haven't really drawn it out or anything, but cup and handle. That handle should very likely blast us off to the 740 plus, and that will be when we start accumulating puts. And you have to think about these ranges too, is that once we break those walls, that becomes an accumulation range. Okay, it's not going to be an instant hit that range and then head down. Sometimes it can be, but you might be trading here the entire session and then pull down very hard. Okay, but usually these ranges are very, very safe. Not all the time. You are going to lose some trades because there's going to be those days where sometimes the market just wants to continue buying up above that range or just wants to continue selling down below that range. I didn't check the put wall yesterday, but I can almost guarantee you yesterday was that type of session where the put wall was probably at that 733, 732, and we ended up just completely dumping underneath that and closing below it. But overall, this is literally how the bankers and brokers see it. Okay. Me, I was born in 1992, but it's like I still feel super young, but at the same time, there was, or there's kids born after 9/11 and everything. There's kids born after COVID. I mean, my daughter was born after COVID, so it's like, geez, I feel old now. Even though I'm not, we've gone through a lot in the last 30 years. Where do you think it'll go when we get the puts? That's a great question. And the way we determine that is multiple different ways. Is that we have different exits here. And I'm going to mark these arrows with different colors here to kind of show those exits. Is that one, we can always find safety within the 20 ma. Okay. Because the 20 ma again is always the most neutral point in the trading session. Whether it's the 1 minute time frame, 10-minute time frame, hourly, daily, monthly, doesn't matter. The 20 ma will always be that most neutral point. So we can always gravitate towards that. Okay, when we see a mean reversion, meaning outside of the bounds, the very high likelihood is that we will hit that point. That's the first exit. Second exit would be the lower Bollinger. Because generally the market tries to aim for those mean reversions. Even though they want to stay at that neutral area, they do want to aim for those mean reversions. So, which means that if we continue selling down below that 20 MA, if we're still seeing volatility, really running hot and everything else, then we can pretty safely say that, okay, we'll head down to that lower Bollinger. Well, what's also located near this lower Bollinger? There's that put wall. Going back to how dealers think, is if there's a put wall there, then very, very likely they're seeing a lot of interest trying to build towards that range, which means that there's a very high potential if we see it push down below the 20 MA, if we start seeing it push down towards that lower Bollinger, that we could aim for that lower put wall. But there's also kind of another exit here too that we have to be somewhat concerned about. I don't know why line like that. But we have this support range. Okay. And with this support range being at that 733.89, that means that, okay, if we start seeing a bounce at that area, that tells us, we need to close our puts very likely. But there's still that put wall sitting underneath it, so I would try to aim for that put wall. But that's kind of how I like to think when it's shorter duration trades, is that you're going to have a bunch of different exits going on here. Usually when I take contracts, I'm taking, multitudes of contracts at a time. So I will be exiting some at that 20 MA. I will be exiting some at that support range. I will be exiting a lot at that lower put wall. Very welcome. So we should get this push above this call wall anytime now. But I do want to look at the gamma again, just again, to make sure it hasn't shifted on us. Nope, still the same. So we're looking above that 740 to enter some of those puts. I will price some puts out once we get to that range. Very likely looking at the 737s, maybe the 738s depending on the price. We'll just have to see what the prices of everything are. Yeah, you're very welcome. Silver, are you still here? Anyway, there was a trade that Silver pointed out to me yesterday, which I really wish I engaged on it yesterday, but I saw that the day before it pushed down to the 114, which I really wish I caught that. This would have been an absolute bonkers trade. Still kind of is, but the contracts on it are going to be a lot more expensive now. But it's GLW. So 1 minute time frame, we are underneath the lower Bollinger, which is still giving me that conviction that we're going to push to the upside. We are seeing the ADL starting to pull down a little bit. Not a whole ton, but it is something. Our volatility is at 99.36, so it has been continuing to pull down. So I'm not too worried about selling just yet until we actually see a much further pull upward in our volatility. But so far I have not entered any positions today. Oh, happy birthday, Quinn. No, we're waiting for one of these ranges to be pushed to really take positions. Again, I'd rather just be super patient with my positions because those are the ones that usually run super hard. It's kind of like yesterday. I basically didn't trade the majority of the day. I did take a couple calls into that upside, which did super well. But then I loaded a ton of puts for like $4 each. Um, and those ran, some of them ran 3,500%. Some of them, just the last two runners, ran slightly over 6,000%. Um, so being patient definitely pays off. Now we did hit this 20 mile here. So we're going to watch our volatility very closely. If the volatility continues to pick up at this point, we're just going to be patient and wait. If not, then we might want to try to engage on some calls here. But let me look at the prices of everything. Volatility still increasing a little bit here. And it's dropping back down. I just really don't like the strikes right now. So there's opportunity to take some calls up towards the upper call wall here. I would try to focus around those 740s, maybe even the 741s. I'm personally just gonna wait because I don't like the prices on them. For me, I'd rather just wait for us to actually push up to that range and then load a bunch of puts up here, and us have a really big push down. That'll break some of the put IV as well. But the IV is actually pretty elevated still today. Yeah, I would rather be just super, super patient. I mean, the thing with zero DTs is, like, there's zero reason to ever force a trade. Even if there's always money to be made, I mean, it's kind of like this, right? Could have you made some bank there? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Um, but it could have also not made bank there too, you know? Um, so I'd rather just be super patient and wait for the positions that I know that my conviction's going to be super high. I mean, like yesterday was a super good example, even though it's a rare example. There's not a lot of days like how yesterday went. I think we had almost like $30 of price movement within the SPY in a very short span of time. However, I was able to take a little over $120 into over 4,400. Um, so there's a lot you could do with $100. There's a lot you could do with $200. Um, just had to be really patient for those entries. And zero DT trading to me has kind of gone to the point where it's like, yes, you can make absolute bank, but you can lose absolute bank as well. Um, so I'm the type of trader now where I'll just sit on my hands the entire day if I don't see a very clear and easy trade that's going to profit a lot. Could you imagine even trying to day trade back when they didn't have this all on a computer and everything? Where you had to sit there and make phone calls and actually discuss prices live on the phone with your broker. Couldn't even imagine that. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like, if you could be patient for those type of contracts, you can make an absolute killing, you know? And yesterday was one of those type of days. Not every day is going to be like that, obviously, but there are good trades to be had in every single session, you know, for the most part. I mean, some sessions will just be an absolute chop fest, but for the majority of the time, we can usually find a really nice contract to take. And you can see some of these really cheap contracts run incredibly hard. I hope so. That'd be nice. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to bonk my mic. Volatility is high and elevated, but it's still pretty low compared to this morning. Again, we did open at that 102, like 60 something. It's only at 191 currently. But I do think the overall conditions again of the market are just super, super bearish. Not bear market bearish, but you know, if we continue trading the way we have been, that's kind of how we get to that point. Oh, my FXY calls are absolutely flying. So the Bank of Japan is unwinding right now. I actually need to post about that because that's super important. That shifts the entire perspective of the day. Hold on 1 second, let me say bye to my daughter really quick. I'll have to mute again in a couple minutes. The Bank of Japan's unwinding right now. Let's see the USJPY. This kind of tells that story. You know, this has been months of uptrend, and within the last few minutes, um, we've broken that range. This is super, super concerning. Okay. That means we should be getting some major selling occurring within overall tech and everything very soon here. Yeah, that's super concerning. I'm so sorry to hear that. My FXY positions are actually green right now. I was actually considering selling them yesterday too, that's funny. They've been getting battered for, multiple months, and all of a sudden, here we go. Are you on Eastern time or West Coast? Gives us about 3 hours regardless. You should make some money in that time. We should find a trade. I'm heavily considering buying puts now that the Bank of Japan's unwinding. Um, just kind of missed the real opportune entry here. But this is a major unwind. So I'm very tempted to just tack on some puts regardless here. I wish I was on the East Coast. I envy that you guys gotta wake up and trade at like 9 a.m. So if we can get back up to the 20 mile here, then I'm absolutely going to add in some puts here. Just because of that unwinding going on with the Bank of Japan. But really what that's telling us is long dated puts are the real direction. Which kind of circles back to those SQQQ calls that I've been talking about. I really think those SQQQ positions are going to be worth a lot of money. Okay, anyway, let me go say bye to my daughter. I didn't get a chance earlier, so I will be right back in like 2 or 3 minutes. Alright, I'm back. So the SQQQ are calls, okay? So remember, SQQQ is basically short QQQ. So a call would be a QQQ put, a put would be a QQQ call. Hold on, I need to look at this chart here for a moment. I didn't even notice this morning, or I would have had an entirely different thesis. So with that said, we can kind of look for this head and shoulders to start forming. Which means that I'm going to try to aim some of my 0DT puts into this right shoulder. Now, volatility is still fairly low. We're still seeing a decent amount of buying in the HIG. It has dropped quite a bit though from the high of the day. It did pull up all the way to the 79.50 and has been basically dropping since then. So don't go too hog wild on puts just yet. But I do think we need to make sure we have something. Super, super concerning though. Potentially that's why we're seeing some of the buying we're seeing today too, besides the Microsoft earnings. Just to push those prices upward before they sell into it. It's kind of what we saw in the FOMC yesterday where they ran it up to that 142. Just to, dump it down. Oh, no worries. I'm just saying be a little cautious before going too crazy on puts here. Yes, we're seeing unwinding by the Bank of Japan, but it's usually a process that takes a little bit of time. We're seeing volatility still fairly low compared to the high of the day. Has been rising slowly, which that's good for the puts. We've been seeing the HIG basically selling off from the high of the 79.50, which is, An extremely good signal for the puts. It is looking like we're going to gravitate towards that put wall. I want to see if that's adjusted at all. Let me check the gamma. Nope, they're still the same. Volatility is starting to wake up a little bit, so it's at the 101.13. So definitely trying to target that put wall here. Volatility just slowly climbing. I would target the exit slightly below this put wall. Even if I am expecting a lower low on the day, compared to yesterday, does not mean we will get that. So we just can't be overzealous here. I think targeting slightly below that put wall would be very ideal. Also want to check where the daily 5 mile is at. So it's at that 736.75. Which oddly enough we hit, that upper bounds of that range. Usually I talk about the upper bounds and the lower bounds being about 1 to 2 hours above and below. We hit slightly above the upper bounds and pulled back underneath it. And technically we have hit the lower bounds of that too today as well. But if we are going to see a rejection of the daily 5 mile, then we should be pushing into that put wall. Yeah, I think it's fairly safe to have the assumption that we're going to push under that 733. We could also see this unwinding within the dollar a little bit too today. Dollar basically for the last few months has been, well above this $100 range. Basically mid-June. So about a month and a half. And then we kind of crushed that all in a single session. Still elevated, still seeing a little bit of buying back up, but this is still a lot of money being moved here between the yen and the dollar. Yeah, I think we'll set it to an odd amount. Remember, always, always, always set your MCOs or stops to an odd number. So if you're gonna do 733.20, just set it to 733.21. I'm looking for a slight push upward, um, ideally towards this 20 ma, but basically I want to see this right shoulder start forming. And if we get that right shoulder forming, I'm probably going to tack on a bunch of these 733s. But technically I'm already positioned for any form of sell-off, just not on the 0DT time frame, but I have a lot of dated positions going. So ideally if we can pull that 737 again, that's when I'll engage in some puts, but if we can't, then I don't know if I'll take any. I was looking for above the call wall, but we had some of the BOG or BOJ, excuse me, um, selling, and that kind of cut us out of our cup and handle. So I'll pull this to that 20 ma. Basically in there, if we can hit that range, I'll be looking for something. And then I'll be targeting underneath the put wall. Today so far for me has just mainly been all of my dated positions doing really well. I have a few that aren't, but the vast majority are just absolutely blasting off today. Here comes some selling. I'm seeing a lot of sell orders flowing in. Looking for volatility to really tick up as well. It's currently at the 100.89. We basically want to be seeing that push over that 102 plus. It's looking super likely that we're going to push under that 733 here. Volatility is still rising, even though it looks like we're chopping in here. It's okay. Did you make some money on it though? So I remember correctly, you bought it somewhat towards the top of the day. A dollar. Hey, a dollar earned is better than a dollar lost, right? It all adds up. Still seeing volatility slowly move upward. Hig is at that 79.40, so a little hesitation in the selling. Let's look at the 1 minute time frame here. A lot of bearish structure. We do have this head and shoulders formed. That Bank of Japan selling really kind of screwed up the momentum of the day. Kind of a bummer too, because I was wanting to take puts above that call wall. So if we can't get a push to the middle Bollinger, I will take some puts. Middle Bollinger is at the 736.95. So if we do hit that range, I will be taking the 733 puts, excuse me. But we are seeing the HIG pull upward a little bit. Have found a little bit of stability within the yen, a little bit of stability within the dollar so far. But I think this is kind of foreshadowing that there's going to be a lot of selling picking up pretty soon here. I think the Bank of Japan probably were waiting for that FOMC decision just to make sure that there was the monetary policy pause. Today's going so slow, it's making me fall asleep. I'm sorry. Basically just waiting for the put entry now. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to bonk my mic again. Alright, so we're getting close to our entry here. Let's look at the SPY puts. Alright, I'm going to be entering some of the 733s here. But we do have to be cautious because volatility has pulled down quite a bit and the HIG has been buying upward. So there's a large potential that we could be pulling above this 20-minute or the 20 mile and heading upward. But I do think that the structure is still pretty bearish overall. It's not like we closed any form of cup or anything. I'm not absolutely loading them. And this is just a 0 DT, so I only took a couple. Just in case we head up. If we head up, then that's when I'll take a absolute ton of them. Now, I want to check the gamma really quick, see if the call wall shifted any. Nope, call wall still at 740, put wall is still at the 733. So, again, ideally, if we can pull above that 740, that's when I will be really loading up on puts. But for now, I'm just taking kind of a starter position. Let's see, is it not an inverse head and shoulders on the 1 minute time frame? Kind of hard to say because it's like right here. That kind of invalidates it. However, not really. I mean, this can just be the head, left shoulder, right shoulder. Okay, not every head and shoulders is going to look the same. Not every inverse head and shoulders will look the same either. So that definitely could. Do have this small cup closed. Handle from that. Closing this cup. So we'll see if we build a handle off of that. If we build a handle off that, then that should push us upward. Very slow trading session. This price action's not too great right now. Volume's not the absolute worst, but not the best either. Basically had a lot of volume early this morning, had a decent chunk of volume during that Bank of Japan selling, and now it's just kind of chop, chop, chop. I still think we get our downside today. Volatility has pulled down, but it is slowly pulling back up again. Hig is still buying upward a little bit, but we'll see if we get continuation in that. We do see a little bit of a cup and handle forming there. But they should be targeting, and by they I mean the dealers slash brokers, bankers, whoever, should be targeting one of these walls to sell into. Whether heading towards that call wall and selling calls, heading to the put wall and selling puts. Volatility is rising again, almost close to the 100. HIG is buying back up pretty well here. So mixed signals all over today. At this point, I just want the call wall or put wall to be pushed. The volt trigger it's not exactly a call or a put wall, but it's saying that the volatility should be picking up quite a bit if we hit that range, just because there's a lot of interest in that area. So it's kind of like if we pushed above the 738 at this point, very likely that's going to cause a very adverse effect, whether it's, buying to the upside or selling to the downside. In this situation, it was selling to the downside. Alright, everyone, I can't really stay awake anymore. Um, I'm gonna go make some coffee, but I'm already on my third cup this morning. With that said, though, my expectations are this, okay? Is that either we're going to push up above this call wall, I just checked the gamma, it's still at that 740. So if we do push up towards that call wall, that's when I'm going to add more puts. Again, I do have some of these 733s going. If we get up to that range, I might up the strike maybe to that 735, 736, really depends on the price. But I will be adding more puts up there if we get to that range. Okay. If we don't get to that range and we start selling back downward, then my exit on the puts will be slightly below this current put wall, which is at the 733. I don't know why it says 733.03. Might have adjusted it or something. But it's at that 733. So regardless whether we get the selling um, prior to this call wall, or if we go to the call wall and then start selling after, that's going to be my same target. Okay. We did break out of this head and shoulders a little bit. Hasn't been fully invalidated yet, but it is starting to work its way there. But does anybody have any questions regarding today or any symbols or anything before I go ahead and take off? Because if not, I'm gonna end up falling asleep on stream. Alright, so no questions. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna stream tomorrow morning and hopefully we have a little bit more of an action-packed day because today has just been an absurd amount of chop. We did have some good action this morning, but as always, you kind of know why I don't take those type of positions that would have been presented at that time. I look for mean reversions, and the mean reversion was not there. We did have a really nice mean reversion down here, which could have been a really, really good call entry, but we were expecting further downside, primarily due to the Bank of Japan starting to unwind positions. Did not happen, so now we wait for the next entry to be able to capitalize on that. But with that said, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. No, I'm still sitting in my puts. I'm still going to be sitting in them for a little bit. Um, I do believe we will be selling down today, but we will have to see. I really expect us to push upward though towards that call wall and then sell down. That'd actually be kind of ideal as well. But yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, and I'll be posting my recap and next day analysis video tonight as always. I'll be doing the written post again as always, and I will catch you all tomorrow morning. So take care, everybody. Have a great day, and thank you so much for watching the stream this morning. I would just continue to hold that contract for now, Jin. Even if you can't add to it, I still think that overall the market's going to try to push down towards that put wall. Um, I'll definitely keep you updated. So just send me a message in Discord or ping me or something. Um, yeah, I know you can't add to it, but regardless, even if we head up, and yes, the theta is going to chop away at that contract a little bit, but from heading up, we should be able to pull down very, very close to that put wall for that exit, which would still cause your contracts to be worth something. So I'll keep you updated. It's just very hard for me to continue streaming right now when I'm halfway falling asleep, so I gotta run around a little bit or something and wake up a little more. So just ping me in Discord and I'll be around. But everybody have a great day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. So take care, everybody. And again, thanks for watching. I always appreciate it.